Hey everyone, welcome to February's video. Wow, we are in 2022. Feels wild. But that said, it felt also like a good and ripe time to get into some hip and lower ab work. I'm going to show you all some things this month around breathing into hips, strengthening hips and low abs. And then next month, I think we will get into more intentional focused strength training of those areas, but this month is going to be more about like easing into them, engaging them, breathing into them. Wow, and my cat is stealing puzzle pieces right now, so we're going to do that as well, apparently. Thank you. So a lot of the things that I'm going to show you this month and next month have come from some of my own self-care routines, which have been influenced by being in physical therapy myself for hip weakness and ab weakness. And a lot of how we live in the world can often be upper body, right? We might be in our heads, we might really be engaged in our arms, shoulders, neck, aware of the tension there, but if we can kind of start to drop down into those bigger muscle groups, into our hips, into our low abs, and start to move through the world a little bit more from that position, that can kind of help us ground a little more, as well as not feel as fatigued and tense up top when we're more engaging kind of our core bodies. Also, if you have any specific hip pain or hip injuries, maybe take these slow. If you're in physical therapy, talk to your physical therapist about whether some of these are going to work for you. I know for me, I had gotten into a really frustrated place from knowing a lot about the body and doing a lot of my own routine with my hips, but still struggling with a lot of pain and not really understanding that. And so it can be helpful to have more of a specialized, tailored approach from one person to the next, depending on what's going on in your specific body. For me, what ended up happening was I needed to really strengthen kind of like inner hips, lower abs, in addition to just like focusing on like outer hip, like glute area, and really kind of target specific areas of the glutes as well. So for example, one thing that can happen for a lot of folks who bike, I've generally been a person who bikes a lot, not much at the moment, but it feels natural to kind of think like, oh, if you're someone who bikes, your glutes are probably very strong. Not necessarily the case. Biking is a lot of like pedaling up and down motion, and a lot of bikers, if they aren't doing the like rotating out, rotating up and in, like that hip motion, those muscles can be weak. So quads might start taking over, hamstrings might start compensating. So some of the things I'm going to show you today are what does it look like to strengthen out and in as well. So let's get into it. As always, I like to start off with a bit of just grounding into my body before I do any exercises or engagement at all, to make sure I'm actually moving from a place that is a little softer, a little more flexible, a little looser. So feel free to join me in this if you want to just kind of ground down, get into the body. So whether you're seated or standing or lying down, be in whatever position is going to feel most supportive to you right now. And let's just take a moment to start to breathe. Start to notice your breath. Start to feel all of that inhale. Let it fill up your belly and your chest. Start to notice the surface underneath you and invite all your muscles and bones to kind of take their own inhale and exhale. Softening into the floor or chair, whatever you're on. Just inviting in a sense of being held. And as you settle in, notice your space as well. Notice your surroundings. Kind of get a sense of what is on your right and your left, what is above you and below you. See if you can land in your body. If you feel really high energy up here, see if you can take a moment to just drop down into your hips, down into your feet, down into your knees. And know that if you are still kind of hanging around higher up, higher energy, that's okay. There's no point in rushing anything or doing anything that the body is not ready for. Just invite your body to be where it is and take it at your own time and pace. All right. I'm going to move into a different position. I'm going to lay down on my back. If this feels comfortable to you, you can try it along with me or rewatch at some point. You'll be able to do this in a different way if you want to remain seated rather than on your back. If you remain seated, I would kind of get into this position if you can. And if you need to have your back supported, you can do something like this. But for me, how I practice this exercise and how it's most beneficial for me is to lay down on my back. So we're just going to start by breathing in to the hips, breathing into low belly. So for me, what that looks like is taking my hands and letting them just softly rest kind of under my low belly or on top. If that doesn't feel comfortable for you, you can bring your hands up a little higher, maybe rest them on your rib cage. If it would feel better to have them kind of resting, find your hip bones in front or find your glutes and maybe just kind of let your hands rest on one of those areas. For me, I'm both on those bones, those hip bones that stick out, as well as my lower belly. And I'm just going to allow my hands to rise and fall as my belly rises and falls. I'm imagining that I'm sending that exhale all the way from my forehead, through my jaw, through my neck, through my sternum, down into my hands. Inviting everything to drop and to soften along that path. Going to invite my sacrum, which is that triangle shape part of the lower spine, kind of indicating where it is right now with my hands. So your sacrum runs into your coccyx, which makes a nice curve forward. See if you can get a little acquainted with your sacrum. So it's going to feel really bony if you kind of rock your hips side to side or front to back. Like, find those bones. Maybe it doesn't feel like a triangle to you, but maybe they're just, it's like, oh, there's some bones. There's a bony ridge rather than like muscle. Find that place and imagine letting it sink deeper into the surface you're on. So for me, I'm kind of rotating my hips forward and rotating them back, and I'm going to live here in this rotated back position. That kind of turns on my low abs, or at least makes me aware of them right here. And I'm going to breathe from that place. And I'm going to stay here with that tailbone tucked in, that glued tailbone, glued sacrum to the mat, activated lower core. And I'm going to start doing knee lifts by simply keeping one foot on the ground and lifting one knee about this amount, so a little more than 90 degrees, kind of getting it up a little closer to my chest. And I'm going to remain aware of my hip creases. I'm going to remain aware of my belly. I'm going to remain aware of my glutes and my sacrum being connected to the mat. And I'm just going to alternate one leg and then the other. If it feels like you're having a lot of hip movement when you're doing this, slow all the way down. We want to keep this as stable and glued in place as we can. Really breathing into and activating your lower abdominals. Into your hips. If you're noticing weakness or difference on one side or the other, that's okay. Just notice that. For me, one hip is very different than the other hip. Notice if your spine starts to want to wave in or out. Try to keep it connected to the floor. Notice if one side wants to help. And for those, I usually do like 2 sets of 15 or like 3 sets of 10. If that fatigues you, don't do that much. Like, start off with 2 sets of 10. Like, see how you can build like stamina and awareness over time. And if, right now that feels like too much, just focus on breathing into lower belly and hips. Like, have that be step one. If you want to experiment with some other things, I'll show you a couple more. So this one, sometimes I have my resistance band with me, sometimes I forget it, so I do it both ways. This is going to be a knee drop. So again, I'm keeping my tailbone tucked, keeping my lower core engaged, and I'm just going to allow one knee to come out to the side. Really keeping my sacrum connected. Really feeling some stuff lighting up in this hip crease. You might feel it light up in a different place. I'm bringing back my knee to center. I'm going to let the other one fall out to the side as well. And feel free to have your arms out to kind of get a chest opener stretch going at the same time if you'd like, or have your hands on your body, wherever feels good. I'm just moving slow enough that I can notice what's happening. And I'm breathing. That is biggest key here. Don't get too concerned or lost if you're, inhaling or exhaling at the correct time in correspondence with your movement. Just keep breathing and let your breath flow in and out as your legs fall out and in. And again, same thing with the sets. Maybe trying out 2 sets of 10, 2 sets of 15, something like that at first. I'm noticing already that just doing that little amount, I'm feeling a desire to stretch out my body and my hips. So if you notice that as well, you can do some windshield wiper movements. You can do a little pull the knee to the chest and then pull it on over, keeping shoulder blade connected to the mat. So a lot of times when folks do this stretch, they'll just like roll on over and this shoulder comes all the way off the ground. Keep the shoulder on the ground, bring that knee up, and then see to what point you can get your knee across your body without your shoulder blade coming off the mat. And just hang out there and breathe into that. You can have your elbow be loose, your knee hanging on your hand. Imagine your breath is traveling all the way down through your glutes, all the way down your spine. Feel free to do that on the other side if you'd like. I'm going to show you what the knee drops look like if you add a resistance band. Alright, so I like these. I'm sure there's like a million brands that you can find. The one that I have is called Perform Better. Just bought it on the internet, but it comes in a pack of different resistances. So I'm gonna loop them around my knees, kind of about right here. I'm gonna lay down. Whoops. Alright. So you'll notice that this kind of lights everything up, even just having my knees apart, knees equal distance with hips. I line up my hip bones and my knee bones. So just take a moment to breathe into low abs again if you added a resistance band as well, because this is going to be a totally different sensation, a lot more muscle activation, even just doing this little amount. And slowing down is going to help us notice those nuances and really start to become more aware of where our pelvises are in space at any given time. Alright, so from here, I'm going to take my leg out. A lot more activation. Just taking it slow. Following my breath. And I don't know if you can see my feet, but basically as my hips rotate out, the like knife edge of my foot is still remaining in contact with the mat. If it feels like one side is a lot tighter than the other, that's totally okay. Just notice what feels okay to do in your body, and if you need to approach one side a little differently than the other, not a problem. Listen to that. Take it slower. Maybe you have less range of motion in one side than the other. You can also do the bands with the marching. You might have to adjust your band once in a while. It likes to roll up with the marching one. Alright. Before I take this band off, you can also use a band like this if you're doing bridges, which is another nice way to strengthen core without having to do sit-ups. You know, I know a lot of believers of no sit-ups, and I'm pretty much all my ab work that I do these days don't involve sit-ups either. Can really strengthen your hips and your core without having to do that. Alright, so going to make sure I'm connected to my core, I'm connected to my shoulders before I lift up. I'm really going to squeeze my hips, tighten my low abs before I lift up. I'm going to tighten my glutes. And I'm going to push up. I'm almost imagining that I'm pushing my sacrum up into the air. Like I'm imagining that triangle of bone in my low back. And I'm imagining my belly button is being pulled from a string into the ceiling. I'm really going to keep everything nice and tight in low belly. And I'm kind of zipping up my legs too in a way that I'm not letting my knees fall in. I'm keeping them nice and strong. I'm noticing connections between my hip bones, my ankles, my knees, kind of these angles that my body's creating right now. That's a lot of activation right there. So go ahead and slowly lower down, keeping everything tight before you hit the mat. Once you hit the mat, you can kind of let everything soften, let your knees fall in. But yeah, just notice how that felt in your body. Take a moment to breathe. Let everything go on the exhale. So with bridges, you know, you can do them nice and slow, up and down. You can also just stick and stay there once you reach the top. Hang out there for a while and then lower down, nice and slow. And take advantage of your movement on the way down. That's also strengthening. Don't just come all the way down. All of the different muscles that engage when you move up or down, out or in, those are all part of the bigger picture. So let's get as much as we can out of each movement. All right. So another one I'm going to show is using a soft ball. Y'all are used to seeing me work with a tennis ball. This is a ball filled with air. This was at, I think, like $3 at Five Below. honestly, like, you can spend a lot more at a lot of other stores, but nice like 5-6 inch air-filled ball from Five Below is excellent. So this ball, you can place it between your knees. If you have a bigger air-filled ball, that's awesome too. Place it between your knees. Get your awareness happening of your connection to the mat again here. I'm noticing my low back connecting to the mat. I'm noticing my core helping me out. All right. I'm going to get my legs up to a 90-degree angle here. And you might want to have your arms out at 90-degree angles too, or maybe out at 180. Or you might just want to have them resting on your body again, maybe resting your elbows on the mat. And I'm just going to slowly come on over to one side, and I'm doing this so slow that I can notice what's happening each step of the way. I'm noticing my sacrum rolling off the mat little by little. I'm running into my bed here, but imagine that I would go as far as I could the other direction that I did the first direction. And I'm trying to keep my low back, fairly close to the mat. I'm not like, I can't obviously keep it flush on the mat, but I'm not just like letting myself roll all the way off either. I'm trying to keep my hip bones connected until they just naturally have to roll off. And I'm not like squeezing the ball, but I'm maintaining the integrity of my angles here. I'm maintaining the integrity of my strength and being able to gently squeeze the ball and hold it while I'm moving side to side. Still breathing into my low abs, breathing into my hips. All right, take those away. If you need to stretch out your legs, you might want to bicycle pedal all the way down. Allow your leg to rest on the floor. All right, take whatever movement you need here. Cool. I'm going to show Clamshells as well, which you might be familiar with already. But I'm going to show a couple different versions. So depending on how you do a clamshell, it's going to target a different part of your glutes. So I think the one that most of us are most familiar with are going to involve everything being stacked. So my hip bones in the front and back are stacked. My knees are stacked. My shoulder and elbow are stacked or down. Okay. And I'm going to slowly lift my knee up and down. And some folks say that it's good to kind of keep flowing, like open and closed, like you're not pausing at the top, but I don't know. I think things can be strengthened differently whether you're doing continuous motions or pausing. The important thing for me is getting the benefit of both the opening and the closing. So not just collapsing all the way down, right? You're not getting that benefit if you collapse all the way down quickly. All right, so how to modify this one. So we have different layers of glutes, and they also kind of exist in different locations. We have glute max, which is bigger glutes. Then we have glute med, or glute medius, and glute minimus. For me, I know that my glute med was the weaker one, so maybe my like bigger butt muscles were taken over, but I really needed to isolate glute medius. All of these are important muscles, so now that I've kind of reached a more baseline point, now I do both variations of clamshells. So I do this one, and then I also do one where I roll myself, my belly button is closer to the mat, my one knee is over my other knee, and then I lift up. And if it feels like you're isolating a muscle or that's kind of smaller and or like farther back, you've got it. And you might not feel it at first. Like things might compensate, right? For me, I know like a lot of times my inner thigh on the opposite leg actually like really wants to help. And I just noticed that. I'm like, okay, you don't have to help. You can help as long as you want. And eventually it will kind of lessen a little bit and stop activating as much. Maybe not on the first 2 sets that I do, but maybe on the third, I'm actually like really activating the muscle that I am trying to target. So just give yourself time, give yourself spaciousness, to let your body realize, oh, I don't have to guard, I don't have to activate these other muscles that I'm used to activating and compensating. See, on this set, I'm really not getting into glute med as much as I want to, but I know if I did this 2 more sets, I would feel it lighting up more. Same thing if you're doing these side leg raises, where you're going straight up and down. You're activating certain parts of your glutes here, whereas if you rolled your belly button forward, and on this time, I roll my belly button forward, I'm taking my top leg and I'm putting it slightly behind my other leg. So I'm here, I roll forward, take my top leg slightly back, keeping my bottom hip connected to the mat, and then I lift. And actually, I didn't move my band down here, but you get more benefit if your band is around your ankles for this one. So again, I roll forward, let my back ankle come back, probably enough so that there's like maybe 3 inches between your big toe that is off the ground and your ankle that is on the ground. And then I'm going to lift. Whew. And that's really going to activate and isolate glute med again in a way that feels very different from the activation of glutes if you are parallel. So feel free to try that out. Try to do both if you want. All right. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show y'all today. We've been going a while, so I think that'll be a good stopping place for this month. And next month I'll get into adding some like light weights, showing you some things you can do both with like a set of light weights and with a resistance band. Still, we'll do more standing things for folks who that is accessible to. We'll also do some things in a pose on hands and knees for anyone that is accessible to. And if not, we'll have some modifications or some different exercises you can try out as well. All right. I hope that there was something useful in there for you, and even if it was just the like, what does it mean to breathe into the belly a little bit more? Cool. See if there's one takeaway from today that might be helpful for you to get acquainted and drop into a lower part of your body. All right. Take good care, y'all. See you next time.